Religion in Singapore is characterized by a diversity of religious beliefs and practices due to its diverse ethnic mix of peoples originating from various countries. Most major religious denominations are present in Singapore. A 2014 analysis by the Pew Research Center found Singapore to be the world's most religiously diverse nation. The most followed religion is Buddhism, with 33% of the resident population declaring themselves as adherents at the most recent census. Tolerance: the government of Singapore is officially tolerant of different religions and encourages religious harmony, but it also bans Jehovah's Witnesses and the Unification Church. Some religions, especially those spearheaded by Chinese ethnic groups, have merged their places of worship with other religions such as Hinduism and Islam. A prominent example is that of Loyang Tua Pekong Temple, wherein three religions, namely Taoism, Hinduism, and Islam, are co-located. Younger Singaporeans tend to combine traditional wisdom with religious beliefs introduced when the British colonized Singapore. For example, South Bridge Street, which was a major road through the old Chinatown, is home to the Sri Mariamman Temple, as well as the Masjid Jami Mosque that served Shulia Muslims from India's Coromandel coast. In schools, children are taught in social studies lessons about the Maria Hito riots and the 1964 race riots, as a reminder of the consequences of interreligious conflict. Mixed-race classes, interaction between students of different races and the celebration of religious festivals also help inculcate religious tolerance and understanding from a young age. Another religious landmark in Singapore is the Armenian Church of Gregory the Illuminator, the oldest church in Singapore, which was completed in 1836. It was also the first building in Singapore to have an electricity supply, when electric fans and lights were installed. Today, the church no longer holds Armenian services, as the last Armenian priest retired in the 1930s. Nonetheless, the church and its grounds have been carefully preserved and various Orthodox Church services are still held in it occasionally, and Coptic Orthodox Church of Alexandria service on the first weekend of every month. Religions of the main ethnic groups. Source: Census 2000. Diversity: the Singapore census includes detailed data on religion and ethnicity, and is taken on a 10-year basis. Figures for religion for the past 3 decades are: the above figures refer to the resident population only, and do not include the non-resident population. Most Singaporeans celebrate the major festivals associated with their respective religions. The variety of religions is a direct reflection of the diversity of races living there. The Chinese are predominantly followers of Buddhism and Taoism, with some exceptional agnostics. Malays are mostly Muslims and Indians are mostly Hindus, but with significant numbers of Muslims and Sikhs from the Indian ethnic groups. Religion is still an integral part of cosmopolitan Singapore. Many of its most interesting buildings are religious, be it old temples, modern churches, or exotic mosques. An understanding of these buildings do play a part in contributing to appreciation of their art. Taoist, Confucianism, and Buddhist figures together with ancestral worship are combined into a versatile mix in Chinese tradition temples. In fact, these three religions had exerted their influences over Chinese cultures and traditions since ancient times. It is sometimes difficult to tell them apart when examining the Chinese heritage. Taoism. Followers of the Tao adhere to the teachings of the ancient Chinese religious philosophy of Lao Tzu, the founder of Taoism, also known as the Pure One, Celestial Worthy of the Way, or Tai Shang Lao Jr. The talismanic and register sect of mainstream Taoism is seen as the most influential through the numerous presence of spiritual mediums. They are concerned with life after death theory, the balance of the two cosmos energies of which are depicted through the Taoist yin and yang theory, and vitality, good health, and longevity. Feng Shui, literally translated as wind and water, also originated from the Taoist yin and yang theory and is deeply rooted in ancestral worshipping that seeks to harmonize the pneumas between the living and the dead. Ancestral worship is a common practice of the Chinese, and the Qing Ming festival during the second full moon is observed by the majority. This reflects that Chinese tradition remains extant in modern Singapore. they pray in memory of their bereaved loved ones, and the spirits of the dead are honored with offerings including food, beverages, joss paper, joss sticks, and even paper houses, which are intrinsic practices of the Taoists. Although Taoist temples and shrines are abundant in Singapore, the official number of followers has dwindled drastically over the years, from 22.4% to 8.5% between the years 1990 to 2000. This, however, may be accounted for by the unclear delineation between Taoism and Buddhism in popular perception. For example, the difference between the two religions can be so negligible that when a Chinese says that he offers incense sticks, it is usually assumed that he is a Buddhist even though he may not actually be Buddhist. The 2010 census showed the Taoists making up 10.9% of the population, an increase of 2.4% of the population. Buddhism equals. One will be able to find Buddhist monasteries and centers from all three major traditions of Buddhism in Singapore: Theravada, Mahayana and Vajrayana. Most Buddhists in Singapore are Chinese and are of the Mahayana tradition. 33.3% of the population of Singapore is Buddhist, although known missionaries can hail from China, Thailand, Sri Lanka and Japan. Bahá'í Faith equals, K.M. Fosdar and Shirin Fosdar, were the first to introduce the Bahá'í Faith to Singapore when they settled here in 1950. Shirin Fosdar was well known throughout Singapore and Asia for her work in the cause of women's emancipation. Her arrival in Singapore had been preceded by an article in the Straits Times on September 15, 1950 under the heading "A Woman with a Message." Through the efforts of Drive and Mrs. Fosdar, by 1952 there were enough Baha'is in Singapore to form the first local spiritual assembly. The community has since grown to over 2,000 members, and today there are 5 local spiritual assemblies in Singapore. They oversee a wide range of activities including the education of children, devotional services, study classes, discussion groups, social functions, observance of holy days, marriages and funeral services. Baha'i marriage is recognized under the laws of Singapore, and the solemnizer is appointed by the Registrar of Marriages. The Baha'is have been provided with a cemetery in Ao Chu Kang since 1957, and the 9 Baha'i holy days have been gazetted since 1972. Members of the first local spiritual assembly of the Baha'is of Singapore, incorporated July 28, 1952. The 5 local spiritual assemblies come under the jurisdiction of the Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of Singapore, the National Governing Council, which was established in 1972. The National Governing Council also appoints the executive members of the various offices which plan and carry out social service projects and collaborate with government and non-government organizations. The Baha'i teachings stress the importance of obedience to civil government and laws. While Baha'is may accept non-partisan government appointments, they do not engage in partisan political activity. The members firmly uphold the injunction of behavior unregistered trademark law, that they must behave towards the government with loyalty, honesty and truthfulness. Islam equals. According to the 2010 census, around 14.7% of the resident population in Singapore registered themselves as Muslims. Most mosques in Singapore cater to Sunni Muslims due to the vast majority of Singaporean Muslims adhering to the Sunni Shafi'i or Hanafi school of thought, although there are mosques that cater to the needs of the Shia community as well. There are approximately 200 Ahmadi. Whilst a majority of Muslims in Singapore are traditionally ethnic Malays, there is also a significant growing number of Muslims from other ethnic groups. In particular, there is a sizable number of Muslims amongst ethnic Indians that statistically include Tamil Muslims and ethnic Pakistanis in Singapore as well. For this reason, a number of mosques specifically cater to the needs of the Indian Muslim community. Additionally, under the direction of the Islamic Religious Council of Singapore, English is increasingly being used as the language of administration, religious instruction and sermons for Friday prayers in mosques across Singapore to cater to Muslims who may not necessarily be Malay-speaking. The ethnic breakdown of Muslims according to the 2010 Singapore Census of Population are as follows. Christianity equals. Christian churches of most denominations are present in Singapore. They were established with the arrival of various missionaries after the coming of Sir Stamford Raffles. Together with Buddhism, Islam and Hinduism, Christianity is considered one of the four main religions today. Christianity in Singapore is not tied to a particular ethnic or racial group, although most Christians are Chinese. In 1985, Mother Teresa spoke at a stadium describing her experiences in Calcutta. On November 20, 1986, Pope John Paul II visited Singapore. Hinduism equals. The majority of Singapore's present Hindus are descendants of Indians who migrated soon after the founding of Singapore in 1819. The early temples are still the central points of rituals and festivals, which are held throughout the year. Sikhism equals. The first Sikhs to settle in Singapore came in 1849. As of 2011, there are 10,744 Sikhs in Singapore. Judaism equals. The first Jews to settle in Singapore came from India in 1819. As of 2008, there are about 1,000 Jews in Singapore. Their religious activities center around two synagogues, the Magay Naboth Synagogue and the Shesd El Synagogue. There were over 1,500 Jewish inhabitants in 1939. Many were interned by the Japanese during World War II, and a number subsequently emigrated to Australia, England, the United States, and Israel. As a result, the community numbered approximately 450 in 1968. In 2005, the number reached 300. Because of a large Ashkenazi immigration rate to Singapore in recent years, the population is now between 800 and 1,000 and comprises mostly foreign Ashkenazi Jews. Jainism equals. The Jain community celebrated a presence of 100 years in Singapore, marking the occasion by rededicating the Stanak, and consecrating the idol of Mahavira. This brings together the two main sects of Jains, Svetambara and Digambara. The Singapore Jain Religious Society actively engages in keeping traditions and practices alive by transmitting Jain principles to the next generation. It also has a strong history of community involvement. The community has no temple, but the Singapore Jain Religious Society has a building at 18 Jalan Yazin. As of 2006, there are 1,000 Jains in Singapore. No religious affiliation equals. As of 2010, 17.0% of Singaporeans had no religious affiliation. Non-religious Singaporeans are found in various ethnic groups and all walks of life in the diverse, multicultural city-state. The Singapore non-religious community itself is very diverse, with many calling themselves atheists, agnostics, humanists, theists or skeptics. In addition, there are some people who decline religious labels but still practice traditional rituals like ancestor worship. The number of non-religious people in Singapore has risen gradually over the decades. Census reports show that those who said they have no religion rose from 13.0% in 1980 to 17.0% in 2010. In recent years, social gatherings of non-religious people are getting popular in Singapore. The Singapore Humanism Meetup is a major network of 400 over secular humanists, free thinkers, atheists, and agnostics. In October 2010, the Humanist Society became the first humanist group to be gazetted as a society. Restrictions. The Constitution provides for freedom of religion. However, other laws and policies restricted this right in some circumstances. Publications and public discussions of religious issues are generally censored, along with negative or inflammatory portrayals of religion. The government does not tolerate speech or actions that it deems could adversely affect racial or religious harmony. In 1972, the Singapore government deregistered and banned the activities of Jehovah's Witnesses in Singapore on the grounds that its members refused to perform military service, salute the flag, or swear oaths of allegiance to the state. Singapore has banned all written materials published by the International Bible Students Association and the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, both publishing arms of the Jehovah's Witnesses. A person who possesses a prohibited publication can be fined up to $1,500 and jailed up to 12 months for a first conviction. Since 1982, the Unification Church has also been banned in Singapore, as they were deemed to be a potential cult and thus disruptive to public welfare. In 2011, WikiLeaks published diplomatic cables which attributed controversial comments regarding Islam to Lee Kuan Yew, the mentor minister of Singapore's government. WikiLeaks quoted Lee as having described Islam as a venomous religion. Lee later denied making the comments. The incident followed Lee's controversial book release Lee Kuan Yew, Hard Truths to Keep Singapore Going. In the book, Lee claimed that Singaporean Muslims faced difficulties in integrating because of their religion, and urged them to be less strict on Islamic observances, an assertion that is seemingly contrary to statistics and studies on the levels of social acceptance, tolerance and interracial marriages practiced by Singaporean Muslim. The speakers for broadcasting the Islamic call to prayer were turned inwards to broadcast towards the interior of the mosques as part of a noise abatement campaign in 1974. Limits were also placed on racial groups inhabiting Singapore's HDB buildings. See also, Singaporean Chinese religion. References